What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 5th episode of the Liderazgo para Todos podcast English version. Thank you so much for listening. Our goal is to help you develop your leadership potential wherever you are. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe to it so you can receive new episodes automatically. Also, leave us a review so that more people can discover this podcast and share it on social media. It helps us so much. In this 5th episode, I want to talk about how to overcome insecurities. This is another important way to build our character. In the last episode, we talked about 10 character traits every leader needs to develop. And in this episode, I want to talk about 10 unhealthy behaviors that come from our insecurities. We will also talk about ways we can overcome those unhealthy behaviors. Did you know one of the best ways to test someone's character is to give them a leadership position? Do you know why? Because when we receive authority, we respond with insecurity. And when we feel insecure, we act with unhealthy behaviors. So part of becoming a healthy leader is learning how to overcome your insecurities. Let me ask you a question. What is an insecurity? Is it a negative feeling? Is it doubting yourself? Is it a wrong mindset? Is it a problem with our identity? According to the American Psychological Association, an insecurity is a feeling of inadequacy or a lack of self-confidence. It's the opposite of feeling secure. When we feel secure, we are self-confident and stable. But when we are insecure, we are unstable and we doubt ourselves. Insecurities lead to all kinds of problems. They make it difficult to believe you are worthy of love or that you are capable of doing great things. Insecurities have a negative impact on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. They cause you to struggle in relationships. They hold you back from reaching your potential, and they rob you of joy in your life. Insecurities are a major problem for leaders. The more authority we are given, the more insecure we feel. The more insecure we feel, the more unhealthy our behaviors become. And the less likely we can increase our influence. Here's an illustration. Many of us have heard of King Solomon, the wisest man to have ever lived. He accumulated more riches, land, and resources than most people ever will. When he died, he passed on his kingdom to his son, Rehoboam. When Rehoboam was king, he was asked by the people if he could lower taxes and lighten labor. They said Solomon had overworked them and overtaxed them. Rehoboam took some time to receive advice from his counselors. The older and more experienced counselors told him to ease the burden for the people and give them what they were asking. The younger and more inexperienced counselors, however, told him to increase the burden for the people and ignore their requests. The older counselors cautioned Rehoboam that if he doesn't listen to the people, they are going to revolt. Rehoboam ignored the advice of the older counselors and listened to the younger ones. He told the people he was going to add burdens on them like they had never experienced before. The people decided to rebel, and it led to a civil war and the collapse of Solomon's kingdom. Why did Rehoboam choose to ignore the requests of his people? Why did he ignore the advice of the older and wiser counselors? Because he was insecure. He was given too much authority and too much power, and he couldn't handle it. This always leads to insecurity. His insecurities led to unhealthy behaviors, which led to unhealthy choices. In this case, the collapse of an entire nation. We may never get the chance to rule a kingdom or govern a nation, but the principle is the same. If we are given authority, our insecurities are going to come out. If we want to be healthy leaders with healthy behaviors, then we have to confront and overcome our insecurities. I want to share with you the 10 most common unhealthy behaviors that come from our insecurities. If we can recognize these behaviors, then we can learn how to overcome them and build our character. So let's get started. The first unhealthy behavior is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy can be defined as claiming to have moral standards to which one's behavior does not meet. In other words, it's saying one thing and doing another. The problem for leaders who are hypocritical is that they are trying to be somebody that they are not. This happens all the time. As leaders, we think we have to be perfect, or we think we have to be the person everyone expects us to be. Studies show that when leaders are hypocritical, followers become unmotivated and eventually leave the team. The solution for leaders struggling with hypocrisy is to become the best version of themselves. Don't try to be someone else or be the person others want you to be. Become the person you were meant to be. Instead of looking outward, start looking inward. The real you is the person people want to follow. The second unhealthy behavior is defensiveness. Defensiveness can be defined as a feeling you get when you think someone is being critical of you and you respond with anger or a desire to get even. In other words, it's attacking someone when you think they're attacking you. The problem for leaders who get defensive is that ultimately they are just trying to protect their pride. They are trying to deflect from insecurities and weaknesses that need to be dealt with. Studies show that leaders who get defensive will not get as many opportunities as other leaders. And it will lead to negative relationships with bosses, coworkers, and followers. The solution for leaders struggling with defensiveness is to stop blaming others and start admitting fault. It can be hard to do it, but it will earn you trust and loyalty with others. Nobody likes to be told they are wrong or they have a weakness, but we all need to hear it. The first step to growing is admitting there's a problem. And usually the areas we get most defensive are the areas we need to grow the most. The third unhealthy behavior is jealousy. Jealousy can be defined as a feeling of resentment towards others because of something they have or something they have accomplished. In other words, it's wishing you had what somebody else had. It's like envy, but it's a more negative emotion. The problem for leaders who are jealous is that they can no longer celebrate others. They get so focused on what they don't have that they lose the ability to celebrate somebody else's win. They feel threatened when somebody else succeeds. Studies show that jealousy causes division and discord in a team. It withholds organizations from being able to create a positive and uplifting culture. The solution for leaders struggling with jealousy is to stop comparing yourself and start empowering others. Empowering others always increases your influence. The more you do for others, the more you will be recognized. Don't build your own platform. Build the platform of others, and your platform will automatically grow. The fourth unhealthy behavior is sensitivity. Sensitivity, or being overly sensitive, can be defined as a person who experiences high levels of stress when facing confrontation. In other words, it's a person who takes everything personally. The problem with a leader who is overly sensitive is that they take themselves way too seriously. They're hard on themselves, they don't receive feedback, and they overreact when they make a mistake. Studies show that leaders who are too sensitive create a tense and joyless environment. Followers lack excitement and enjoyment. People feel like they cannot laugh or have fun. The solution for leaders who are overly sensitive is to learn to laugh at themselves sometimes. It's okay to joke around. It's okay to relax. It's okay to have a good time. If you do something embarrassing, let it go and laugh about it. Life is too precious not to enjoy it. The fifth unhealthy behavior is to be controlling. Being controlling can be defined as a person who tries to dominate others or situations. In other words, it's a person who always has to get what they want. The problem with being controlling is that control is an illusion. Nobody can truly control another person or a situation. Even if somebody could, it wouldn't last, because people are not meant to be controlled, and most situations are out of our control. Every parent or spouse can tell you how impossible it is to control another person. Studies show that people need autonomy to be successful. They need space to figure things out on their own. The solution for leaders that struggle with being controlling is to do what only you can do and give away the rest. You can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. The better you become as a leader, the less decisions you'll have to make. So focus on what you do best and empower others to do everything else. The sixth unhealthy behavior is being critical. Being critical can be defined as always finding fault with the words, actions, or behaviors of others. In other words, it's choosing to see the worst in everyone. The problem with critical leaders is that they put unrealistic expectations on others. They expect too much from people. And when people don't meet their expectations, they get angry and criticize the person. Studies show that critical leaders create a toxic and untrusting culture where followers struggle with their self-confidence. The solution for critical leaders is to remember that people are your greatest resource. It's not all about finishing tasks and accomplishing goals. It's also about building people. If you are too harsh, you might finish a goal, but you will lose a person. Create realistic expectations and help your people to develop their potential. The seventh unhealthy behavior is complaining. Complaining can be defined as expressing dissatisfaction or annoyance at someone or something. In other words, it's always seeing the negative. The problem with leaders who complain is that they are only focusing on what they want. We complain because we are not getting what we want. As leaders, it's not about what we want. It's about what's best for the team. A study at Stanford University found that complaining actually reduces our brain's ability to solve problems. If we complain or hear someone complain for more than 30 minutes, we could actually damage our brains. The solution for leaders who struggle with complaining is to remember the power of their words. Words have the power to transform lives and change destinies. One positive word could change somebody's life, but one negative word could ruin a person's life. As leaders, we have to remember how much influence our words can have on other people. The eighth unhealthy behavior is arrogance. Arrogance can be defined as a person who has an obnoxiously elevated sense of themselves. In other words, it's a person who thinks they are better than they really are. The problem with arrogant leaders is that they think they know everything about everything. They always have to share their opinion. They always have to have the last word. And they always have to prove they are better than everyone else. Studies show that humans have a tendency to overestimate their abilities. And that is true of leaders as well. But arrogant leaders tend to alienate and discourage others. The solution for arrogant leaders is to believe you can learn something from anyone. The moment we stop learning is the moment we stop leading. We don't know everything, and there is always room to grow. So as leaders, we have to be committed to learning, no matter who it comes from. The ninth unhealthy behavior is impatience. Impatience can be defined as not being willing to wait for something or wanting to do something without waiting. In other words, it's thinking the world revolves around you. The problem with impatient leaders is that what they want now is rarely what the team needs most. Impatient leaders focus on what is urgent, but they forget to focus on what is important. The things that are most important, vision, values, purpose, and growth, take time to develop. Studies show that impatient leaders tend to make bad decisions, react out of anger, and give up when things don't go their way. The solution for impatient leaders is to prioritize what is important over what is urgent. There is a place for urgency, creating deadlines and motivating people to finish. But what's more important is creating a healthy culture where people are satisfied, joyful, and growing. The 10th unhealthy behavior is stubbornness. Stubbornness can be defined as a person who refuses to change their mind or behavior. In other words, it's a person who is difficult to get along with. The problem with stubborn leaders is that they have become too comfortable. They don't want to change because they don't think they have to change. They expect other people to change, but they refuse to do it themselves. They won't acknowledge their blind spots in order to change them. And studies show that stubborn leaders hold themselves back and the organization back from growth. The solution for stubborn leaders is to remember that change is inevitable, but growth is optional. In a fast-changing world, being stubborn is no longer expedient. Being stuck in the past or being committed to old ways will not help a team. It will only hurt it. The best thing you can learn to do is embrace change. Success requires growth, and growth always requires change. These are 10 common behaviors of insecure leaders. There are probably more, but these are ones that are obvious for all to see. If you see yourself practicing any of these behaviors, then it's important to ask yourself, why are you feeling insecure? In the next podcast, we are going to talk about where our insecurities come from and how to better cope with them. So don't miss that next episode. Let's finish this episode with some application. Here's a quote from Bob Goff. He says, "Insecurities don't get conquered, they get understood. And when they get understood, they don't have power over us any longer." This is such an important thing to remember. Our insecurities are not going away. We cannot eliminate them, but we can understand them. Once you are aware of your insecurities, then you can develop a strategy to overcome them. And I'm excited to share more about this in the next episode. Here's a challenge I want you to try this week. Identify the unhealthy behaviors in your life. What are they? When do they happen? Why do they happen? What insecurities are behind them? One of the best ways to develop your character is to identify and overcome your insecurities. Make this a goal as a leader. The more you can overcome your insecurities, the more you can lead with your full potential. It's never too late to start, and it's always worth it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Don't forget, we are going to launch our first course in April called Influence: How to Become a Leader Worth Following. You are going to learn 8 habits that will transform your life and leadership. Each habit will include a video lesson, an outline to follow, and a project to help you put it into practice. Stay tuned for more info. And remember, leadership is not just for someone. Leadership is for everyone. See you next time.